I'm a big earn what you get guy, right? I'm not about trophies for everyone or nothing. That's not me. Matter of fact, I'm probably the polar opposite of that. But what I am for,
We've got a special guest with us today. We got Coach Scott Smith with the Bombers Fastpitch Organization. He's actually the program director and the 18U head coach. Coach, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. I want to thank you for joining me. I know we got a lot going on this time of year, trying to get everything done. So when you finally were able to catch up and kind of get going here, I want to start off by asking you, how did you get started and when did you get started with the Bombers?
Well, obviously, like a lot of people that end up coaching girls softball, I ended up because I had a daughter who played, and she was playing in a local rec league here in New Braunfels, and I was actually stationed in San Antonio at the Fort Sam area. And, a few people that I knew from this area, I was kind of getting an opportunity back home in my hometown, and they kind of knew I had some background in baseball, and they were like, "Hey, you're gonna coach a team, right? This is just a rec team." And I looked around, nobody else would do it, just like how most of the time it happens. And I said, "Well, yeah, sure." And I was kind of embarrassed that I was coaching girls softball. You know, I had to talk to my buddies that, you know, were giving me a lot of trouble about it. But I had no idea I was going to fall in love with the sport the way I did. And that was in 2003. The Bombers had started in 2001. A gentleman named Mike Reimer and a lady named Connie Fight started it. It started with two teams in 2001. And in 2003, when my daughter was playing rec softball, people wanted to have another rec team, a 10U team. We made it a Bomber team. And after about a year, her daughter graduated. They were in high school, these two high school teams. And she said, "Well, I'm just gonna be a fan now. It's you're in charge." I'm like, "In charge of what?" There's like 2 or 3 teams. And so in 2003, we were about 2 or 3 teams, and I was the so-called guy in charge. And then here I am in 2022, still doing this and loving every minute of it. Fell in love with the sport, and it's been a fun journey.
I can imagine you've got a ton of memories, a lot of games coached. I want to ask you, I was reading this a little bit earlier. You've had the opportunity to be around a lot of softball. You've been able to coach a lot of softball. Did you think we would get to a point now where there's so much popularity on ESPN, on socials and stuff like that, where the game has just exploded?
Yeah, you know, yesterday, I think I had 4 games on at one time. At some point, I was trying to keep up with some of my players that were playing yesterday. It does not shock me because the sport's so good, and it doesn't shock me because the female athletes that you're watching on TV are some of the best athletes. It doesn't matter if they're a female athlete; they just happen to be a female. They're some of the best athletes in the world, and when you give them the platform that they deserve, which is starting to happen, and there needs to be more done. But when you give them that platform and allow them to shine, their heart, their desire, and why they play, because they all play for the love of the game. They don't play for the money. They don't play. There is no money at the back end of this right now for them, which is a disservice. But when you watch them play, you can't help. There's no coincidence that college softball ratings are outperforming college baseball. And college baseball is a great game, right? My son-in-law played at A&M. I'm a college baseball fan. Like I get it, but the reality of it is that the female athletes on TV are such good ambassadors of sports, not just softball. They're just great sport ambassadors.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a daughter, you can see why you want your daughter to be part of something just like that. And so we have great role models in the game today. The sport's in probably the best place it's ever been. It doesn't shock me that the popularity continues to grow. But again, what I hope is corporate America and everybody else that has an ability to help push the sport forward will start that process of investing in the sport and in our athletes and make it to a point where we see more of it for sure.
I agree. It lends itself so well to TV because the action is so fast. I mean, you've got small ball, you've got the long ball, you've got dominant pitching, you got so much going on. And the young girls that are up and coming, whether they're 8 or they're 16, they see that and it gives them something tangible that they can go, hey, that can be me. It's no longer just a few times a year or maybe even less than that, where it's just the Olympics that they see, or they go to a camp and they just know a name, but they don't know a face.
Sure.
So, and you mentioned the ambassadors, man. You've had the opportunity to coach some of these ambassadors that girls look up to. You know, who would you say right now is probably the number one ambassador for our sport that seems to be kind of leading the charge everywhere she goes, everywhere he goes? It's growing the sport, you know, throughout the country and throughout the world.
Man, it's so hard to put one name on that because so many of them are doing such a good job, and it would, you know, certainly you worry about not mentioning someone who's deserving. So in respect to not, I'll put my disclaimer out. Anybody I don't mention is not because they're not worthy of that response. But you know, I had the chance to be around and coach Team Alliance this last summer against the U.S. national team, and you know, I had a chance to share the dugout with Montana Fouts and Sis Bates and some of those guys, and I'll never forget. We were playing in Sugar Land, Texas, at a baseball stadium. This goes back to like there needs to be big time softball stadiums. We were playing in a baseball stadium that holds about 7,500 people. I think there were 5,000 people in the stands. It was packed. It was a really cool environment. You had Team USA who's on the brink of going to the Olympics, and I remember there was lines of kids just lined up over the top of the dugout. Sis was standing there, and I said to Sis, Sis, what's it like? And she looked at me and goes, what do you mean? I go, what's it like? And she had that weird look, and I go, what's it like to be the person that every one of those little girls wants to be? And you know, I'm sure she's thought about that, but I wanted to ask the question. You know, and you know, Montana foul, like middle of the game, kids are pressing their face against the glass, sticking their arm around the dugout to get her to sign a ball in the middle of the game. You know, like one, it's really cool, and two, it's so deserving of them. So you know, a couple of guys like that. There's so many others. You know, Jada Coleman and you know, so many players out there that I think do such a good job of being brand ambassadors for our sport. Like I said before, our sport's never been in a better place. And when you start to have role models like those guys, you really feel good about where the sport's going. So, you know, those are just a few, but they do a great job.
I think we can just take them all and kind of put them into one group and say, hey, all of them are great sports ambassadors, because I think they embrace that role really well.
For sure.
You know, there's camps, there's different places and different meeting chances to see these athletes, and they're always smiling. They're always wanting to, you know, sign something or talk to something or take a picture, take a selfie with somebody. They're just doing so great with that. You mentioned Alliance, and you know, Alliance is taking the world by storm. Kind of bring us up to speed on where Alliance is now, and then kind of how that got started and you know, made the big boom, you know, just, you know, recently within the last year or so.
Sure. And I appreciate it. Probably easier to start with where it started. You know, obviously when COVID hit, COVID presented a lot of challenges on many fronts, right? But if we're just purely talking about the softball side of it, COVID presented some really big challenges for people like myself and other people who have teams or organizations. You're trying to figure out, hey, what do we do? What do we do? Like how do we navigate this process? There wasn't a roadmap. There wasn't a plan of action that we could follow. It really made a lot of people's hearts beat pretty fast when you're trying to figure out how to keep your players engaged. Like if you're just being coached at that point, right? Like, okay, how do we train them? Like, how do we do this remote thing? Like, so many things came out of COVID really from a really good perspective, as far as how we communicate with people, like you and I are doing right now, right? It's connected us in a better way in a lot of ways. I'd like to think that we're going to get back to where it's even a closer connection, where we're shaking hands and seeing people smile and all the things that you take for granted sometimes. And I feel like we're all getting to that place. It's getting better. But what came from COVID was good friend of mine. He's a competitor of mine. I try to bash his brains in every time we take the field, and he tries to do the same to me. Kevin Shelton here in Texas with the Glory, and he's somebody he'd be smart to talk to. But Kevin and I, we talk about softball a lot, right? And I picked up the phone and reached out to him and said, Kevin, what's your plan? Like, how are you going to approach this, man? Like, we've got to figure something out. And there were some unique conversations about how, like, Texas, we could kind of sense that we were going to have a little more flexibility, a little more freedom in Texas than you might have in other places. And we were all, our paths were kind of pretty well established, right? About what tournaments we were playing in, what our summers looked like every year, all those things. And it was really clear there was a lot of uncertainty about what that was going to look like across the country. Kevin and I came to the conclusion pretty fast that we had a responsibility to our parents and to our players to be have a lot of foresight, be very respectful of them, the unanswered questions that would be presented to them. Like, well, how do you, it's the simplest thing is, how do you get on a plane, right? Like, how do you get on a plane and think you're going to go from here to there and play? Like, that's not even some down to the simplest things. We started there and just said, it got to be pretty clear that we weren't going to be able to have a summer that looked like what we'd normally experienced. And so we started down conversations of, okay, you got a lot of teams in your club. I got a lot of teams in my club. Let's figure out a way to create these opportunities for them to play, right? Let's just figure out what that looks like. And that was as simple as the conversation was. Like, that's truly as simple as it started. And then, you sit on a Zoom call. We were sitting on Zoom calls like every night because you could do nothing else, right? Or even during the day. We may or may not have drank a cold beer or two in those meetings. And well, I drank a cold beer for sure. I can't put Kevin in the cold beer drinking part, but for sure me. We got to the point where we're like, we're going to play each other. We're going to create these opportunities to play. Well, what if we kept stats? And what if we created this like it's like a league environment, right? Like, where there's something on the line, right? It's going to be really hard to replicate all the time, because what we don't want to do is just go out and play, right? We do enough of that already. Right. We play enough games that nothing matters. Like, that's a really big challenge in our sport. And, that became very clear. Like, well, let's just put the league together. And so then we were like, well, heck, if we're talking about this, why don't we just call Jazz over at the Impact? She's got a lot of teams. We can figure that out too. All right, well, let's do that. And then all of a sudden we got to talking, and we're like, why don't we just offer this out up to everybody? Like, what if they have the same challenge? We'll just figure this out. We'll come up with these strategic things. So David McCorkle, who's on our Bomber, he coaches in our Bomber program. He's our vice president with Bombers Fastpitch. He's like this Google Doc freak, right? and like, that's another thing that came out of COVID for me. Like, 28 years in the Army, I don't mess with a lot of Google Docs. He's a master Google. Like, he has a degree in Google Doc, right? And so he put together a Google Doc. We sent it out to this database of coaches in Texas. And I swear, I tell this story all the time. Literally, I'm watching this Google Doc, and it was really an interest form. It was a Google form. Mm-hmm. And if you were interested, fill this out if you're interested in participating in what we were talking about. Literally, this Google Doc is getting filled out like in real time. Like, we're just watching. We're all laughing. Like, we're on this Zoom call watching this. We're sharing the screen, and it just kept going. It just kept getting filled up. And there were 400 people signed up for it. Like, it was so organic. It was so cool, right? And in a lot of ways, when everything seemed like we were getting disconnected from each other because of COVID, and what happened in Texas, and I can only speak for Texas on the front end of this, is it actually brought us all together. Mm-hmm. And that was really cool. So once that happened, that created a whole different, this was happening like in February, right? Or March of that year, right? So we still had until our state wasn't even open to play yet, right? Like, we're having Zoom calls where we're talking about, okay, well, if we put barrier tape. We could make the dugout bigger. We could, like, we're having like conversations with ballparks, with city municipalities that are even they're trying to decide whether they're even gonna let us play.
Right.
But we got this list of 400 coaches who are all about it, right? So it really spearheaded the conversation, and we came up with the Texas Fastpitch League, and that's really truly as simple as it was. There wasn't this like super thought out process about how it was going to happen. We got on Zoom calls and just started talking about how can we make the sport better. Well, once that took off, then we had buddies around the country who were like, "What are y'all doing?" And we were like, "Yeah, we just told them what we're going to do." And so we just shared all of our Google Docs with them, everything we had come up with, so they didn't have to recreate the wheel.
Right.
And they took it. And then that's how the Heart of America League became a thing. And then our friends out in California, we sent everything to them. And next thing you know, this Google Doc that had like 10 documents has 50 in there. And you get all these like minds. You talked about like minds. You get all these smart guys in a room, and they don't take much to get in a room and be smarter than me. But we get all these guys in this room on these Zoom meetings. And what started happening is this thing started to become a thing, right? And that's truly how it began. And I don't think people believe us when I tell that story. That's literally how it happened. And then we were able to have some relationships with some smarter people than even us, because we're a bunch of softball coaches. And we got Jamie Lowprice involved. And what we felt like, Tyler, was that we wanted to mimic college softball, right? We started saying, okay, if we're going to do this, how do we make the sport better? Right? What are some of the challenges that exist in the sport right now? One, it's super expensive. Two, people do not like stadium play. Three, you have too much travel, right? We in a lot of ways we were breaking, like me. I'll talk about myself, and I say we, but you could use your imagination. There's a bunch of teams just like us that travel 6, 7, 8 times a year, and we were breaking our athletes, right? 16 and 17-year-old girls are not meant to travel all over the country, play 7, 8, 10 games, fly the very next week and do the exact same thing. Their bodies are not built for that. We don't have trainers, right? We're playing a college softball season in 6 weeks. They play 50 games, 60 games in the course of a season. We do it in 6 weeks. So we were breaking our players physically. And so we said, listen, how can we create this sport, make it better? Well, we could create these regional environments, right? Where there's a lot on the line, right? Because we were playing a lot of showcase games. It didn't matter who won. Like, they're just, somebody calls, hey, you're getting a free invite berth to this event or that event. And like, I started in the days we were playing Gold Nationals where there was 160 teams for 6 berths. Those were slugfests. Yeah. Right? I literally grabbed my stuff, walked off the field. They're giving 2 berths. We got third, and we played 13 games. Right? Like, we didn't make it. But what we were doing was creating these competitive super freaks. Mm-hmm. Right? So our competitive side had gone down. So that was at the top of the list for the alliance and the leagues, was how do we increase competitiveness? Well, at the top, you have to earn it. You have to earn it. You have to earn a berth to play in the national. There's no free invite berths. That cannot be a thing, right? And then let's create an environment where there's more on the line. A lot. Let's keep stats. Because I also felt like one of the prerequisites as we were doing this, so kind of jumped ahead, but we decided to create it like college softball. So the Texas League, if you want to do the analogy, the Texas League is the Big 12. Right. The Southeastern Fastpitch League is the SEC. The Atlantic Coast Fastpitch League is the ACC. The Pacific Coast Fastpitch League is the PAC. Right? Like that environment replicates college softball, and that's our job at the travel ball level, is to prepare players to play at the next level, which is college softball. Right. Well, why wouldn't we mimic that? Why wouldn't we replicate that? Why wouldn't we do that and prep them for that environment? So we literally, when we did the alliance, if you want to do the analogy, the alliance is the NCAA. The leagues are the conferences. Well, the alliance holds all the conferences together. And that's where Jamie Lowprice, her coming on board and becoming she's our president and CEO of the Alliance Fastpitch. She's the tip of the spear, right? Like, she holds everything together. Because if we just cared about what's good for Texas, and I don't care about what's good the Pacific Coast Fastpitch League or the Atlantic Coast Fastpitch League, this doesn't work.
Right.
And so we meet every week. Our leagues meet every week. We have commissioners, and they talk through how do we create this environment to make it better. So that's truly how the Alliance just kind of literally just organically became a thing. And last year was incredible. The national championship was awesome. Other than the fact that I lost in the national championship game. So that was the only downside for me. I'll tell you, the only bad memory I have of the Alliance is losing. But getting through that process, I'll never forget it. Just like anything else, the players are disheartened. We're at Oklahoma City. We played at Hall of Fame Stadium. We're at Oklahoma City. We just lost the national championship game. I have this 4 or 5 seniors that are looking there. And I said, how cool is this? You just replicated what you're fixing to do in the next 3 or 4 years, right? You've already been here. You've been through this. And when you get back here, and you all will, because they're all going to schools that LSU and Texas and places like that, you're all got a chance to be here. I want you to remember this moment. All right, call upon these. This was cool. It sucks to have lost, but this was a cool opportunity for you, and I'm proud that I was part of this process with you. And that's the replication of college softball. I think college coaches, and I know they have, we talked about it, they appreciate the process the Alliance is. It's meant to be hard. This sport is very hard. It's meant to failure. It's a failure-driven sport, and we need to create an environment where we're building the toughest players and put armor on them, so when the moment gets hard, we're ready.
Absolutely. I go back to when the organic nature of which it started, and I think that is why it is such a success, because it wasn't something that was just thought up. Hey, let's do this. We got this going on, but let's rework something and make something completely off the wall and different, and then hopefully it works. I mean, y'all made it out of necessity to keep the sport alive during the process or during COVID. And then you analyze the process. Okay, what's going to make this work? What's going to make this work? How are we going to do this? And then boom, once you made it work in Texas, you were able to share it, and it continues to grow, and you guys continue to, enhance what you guys are doing, and it makes it better for everyone. It's not like one person is gaining from it. It's everybody's gaining from it. It has everyone's best interest at heart. And I think that's why Alliance is what Alliance is.
Yeah, I think what's really cool about it, Tyler, is that the Texas Fastpitch League got better when the other leagues were created, because now they're sharing ideas that are making our league better. Mm-hmm. And that collaboration of effort towards a common goal, and the common goal, like if you were just, I know it's really cliche a lot of times to have a mission statement, right? And I'm not big on them. I'm big on direction, right? I ought to be able to look at a business or look at a person and see the direction they're going, right? And why that direction is either good for me as a consumer or not. And our direction is very simple. It's what's best for the sport. We declared that we had to be nimble. We have to be able to pivot and turn on a dime that makes the sport better. A good example is this. We expanded our national championship from 64 teams. It was meant to replicate college softball. The problem is there's more than 64 teams that are good enough to compete.
Right.
And so now it's 96 teams this year with the same structured format. Instead of 4 teams in a regional to start the national championship, there's 6. Like, we just pivoted as quickly as possible in an effort to make the sport better. And that came as a byproduct of putting people in a room and like minds. How can we make it better? Like, what makes it better, right? One of the big things we talked about when it came down to the Alliance National Championship, national championships have gotten to be 7, 8, 9 days long, right? A family, the average American gets 2 weeks of vacation. I got to take both of my weeks just to go to your one national championship, which means I can't go to this event or that event. It was very clear for us. It had to be less than 7 days. We started with 5 this last year. We got it 1 day, which is a 0 day for our All-American game and our other stuff. But those are prerequisites. They're non-negotiables. It has to be less than a week's vacation. There has to be no state of play. We set the criteria for the cost of the event. Like, we've done some things that are in effort to really help benefit the sport, benefit parents, and benefit players. The membership has always been in the Alliance has been a membership-driven approach where players and coaches become members of the Alliance, right? And like, Jamie spends enormous amount of time and effort in trying to produce values to being a member of the Alliance.
Right.
Like over the top, right? It's like $50 a year to be part of the Alliance. She's trying to give it where you get $550 worth of value, right? Like that's her daily goal, right? For her. And there's nobody better in our sport to be at the tip of that spear in trying to make the sport better, give back to it, and put it on a higher level. Like you and I started the conversation when it came to what girls and female athletes are being part of. The Under Armour agreement is a big deal. Under Armour All-American football game is a big deal in football. And when we met with Under Armour, with the Alliance, we met with them. We said, listen, if we're going to have this conversation, and I don't mean it like confrontational. We just said this, if we're going to have this conversation, we only have one thing. It has to be as big a deal as the football game. They have to get everything that the football players get. If you're going to invest in those football players, we've seen what they did, all of the gear, all of the support, everything. Under Armour came in above that, right? That was incredible, right? And so for me, that was a really big thing, was where that I'm gonna put my laptop for you, but I apologize. I got one of those lights. That's, you can tell we're doing this live. I got one of those lights that kicks off if I don't move around. But Under Armour came in over the top, and that's when I knew, like, wait a minute. These companies who are not in the softball space in travel ball and investing in female athletes are coming in at this level. Now the Under Armour All-American Alliance, Under Armour All-American game for softball is as big a deal. We were on ESPN in year one. Yeah. Like, it is a big deal, and it's going to be bigger deal this year. So I'm excited about the Alliance, man. More teams have an opportunity to qualify. More teams have an opportunity to go compete for a national championship. And then, heck, we've got the Alliance Open National. There's a lot of teams that just want to know where they're going to play this summer. They're not at the level yet to make that commitment to go through the qualifying process. Now they can sign up and go. They don't have to qualify. They can sign up to go play an Alliance Open Nationals in Chattanooga. They know exactly where it's going to be. It's going to be an incredible event. So there's the teams that have to go through the qualifying process, and there's an option for teams that just want to go and play and get the Alliance experience and just play in an Open National. So I'm excited. That's an example of adjustment from year one to year two.
I think the Open is going to give those teams, just like you said, an opportunity to kind of see where they're at. I mean, they hear, well, we can't compete. Oh, I bet we can compete. Well, hey, put your money where your mouth is. Go get that experience. It can't hurt. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to go out there and lose, but look at what all you're gaining from just having that experience. And, with all the different leagues with Alliance, you got some that are way up north. You got some that are way down south, some in California. You guys there in Texas, there's so many different little nuances about the game in each region that you guys are now able to share that information. So it's growing the game in Texas because you're learning what they're doing in Florida. Same thing, if it's Virginia and California, they're able to kind of, learn from each other and learn that style of play, because they're going to see that style of play once they get into college. And we're going to, say Texas is playing Virginia Tech. And those girls, the teams usually recruit around that area. You might have those ones that go across the country, but
the best pitcher I faced all last year was from the state of Virginia. Played on Tom Bunn's team.
Yeah,
we struck out 21 times in 2 games. I had to play him in the super regionals. We beat him 1-0 and 2-1. I never want to see that girl ever again. Thank goodness she graduated, right? But an example of that is that player might not get the same sort of coverage or publicity that she deserves. She was on the national stage playing, and I'm not tooting our own horn, but we went in as a number 1 seed. I'm playing the 16 seed in the super regional. That's not supposed to be a competitive matchup in a big term, right?
Right.
I've never played 2 tougher games ever, right? And like, I'm just telling you, like, that was an incredible experience for our players. In fact, I think it played a role in us not winning the national championship. We had to empty our tank to get through the super regions. Normally, that's not the case in the national tournament. We were replicating college softball,
right?
And that's incredible. The other thing I would be making a mistake if I didn't share about the Alliance is one of the other prerequisites is that we had to acknowledge there was a lot of inequities in our sport, right? There's a lot of haves and what people would classify themselves as have-nots. I classify it more as they haven't had the opportunity, right? And so what I love about the Alliance is that it's not a group of people who are sitting in a room and deciding, I'm going to give you a berth and I'm going to give you a berth because what you did 5 or 10 years ago, and I'm going to give you a berth. I like you. I don't necessarily care for you because you don't align with me and you're not friends. We're not friends. I'm not giving you that, or I don't know who you are, and I'm not giving you a berth. You might have a really good team, but I don't know you, so you don't get any more. That, and I'm not bashing that process. It's just not the right process because it really alienates a lot of people who are deserving. And so for me, it was very clear. I'm a big earn what you get guy, right? I'm not about trophies for everyone or nothing. That's not me. Matter of fact, I'm probably the polar opposite of that. But what I am for is a fair shot, and it should be equitable. The process should be equitable for the little team over in Billy Bob, Mississippi, that puts in the work just like my kids do in Texas. They're just as talented. They work just as hard. They ought to have the exact same opportunity, right? And that was important for me. That was a non-starter for me in those conversations is whatever process we go for qualifying and all that, it has to be fair for every single person. And if you don't take advantage of the opportunities, and that's on you, right? That's on you, right? And I'll use this. This is a great kind of segue to end the conversation on alliances. There's a team that won the 16U national championship that if I said their name, the majority of this country would not know who they are, the West Bay Warriors. That is not a perennial, that is not a Corona Angels, Bat Busters, Firecrackers, Bomber, or anybody else. The West Bay Warriors were a 2-team org. They won the 16U national championship. What a great story, man. Like they won the national championship. I'll promise you this, those kids are on the map now. And that program is on the map now. And they earned that. And that's such a cool story. And I know those guys, I know how hard they've worked. I've played them for years, right? And they're good people. And they did it the right way. And they took their team, went through the process and won the national championship. Like, that's such a cool story. It's an example of why the Alliance is a working model that makes sense. And so I think I'm really proud of what the Alliance is. We haven't done everything right, Tyler. There's things that got to get better like anything else. But the intent, the azimuth of the compass is pointed in the right direction with people who care about the sport. And I can tell you that the intent is that it's going to be a continued product that gets better and better every year.
I agree. The future is bright, not only for Alliance, but for the sport. Getting the girls into college with that right mindset, not having that sticker shock or that shell shock when they first get there and go, okay, hey, I'm going to Alabama or I'm going to Florida or whatever. And then it's like, whoa, wait a minute. I don't know what I've gotten myself into. Yeah. So we'll segue over to once we get them into college and they're in the program and they've been recruited and they're finally there, they have their career, their collegiate career. This COVID thing has created super seniors. What has that done to recruiting, in your opinion? And is it slowed down the process a little bit for girls? Has it made the process a little bit longer? And is that September 1 date, is that kind of going out the window now as far as signing is concerned and how the process is changed a little bit?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, I don't think there's an absolute to it. Like, a lot of times we try to put absolutes, like it's affected college softball this way. At the Division I Power 5, it's pretty challenging, right? Like, the number of opportunities are less because of the transfer portal. Mm-hmm. You have a lot of college coaches that are kind of holding back some of their scholarship money because they know there's a real high possibility of a really good player being in the portal. Mm-hmm. And so that means less opportunities for high school players, right? And that's just a fact, right? And we have seen that. That is a real thing. The 5th year thing, I think last year was a bigger deal than it has been this year. I haven't felt that, right? Like, as much. There are kids that are still around, but I think the dynamics of the way college coaches, and they got a hard job. They're navigating it almost like a salary cap in a lot of ways. And I think for the most part, they've done a great job. I know some that haven't. I've been disappointed in some of the process as well, but for the most part, I really think they got a very challenging job on their hands in navigating that. And I think for the most part, have done a great job. I don't think it's as relative, the 5th-year senior thing. I haven't seen it like at the mid-major down, get into D2 and D3, obviously. It's not as affecting it, other than you see some pretty large rosters, right? Some pretty heavy rosters, but I haven't seen it affect the recruiting side of it necessarily. I think that process is going to continue to shake itself out. I think it shook off a little bit this year. The September 1 date is super important for every kid when September hits of their junior year. Like, it's an important aspect because it opens the door to conversation and contact in a lot of ways, right? And so, you have that 1% to 2% that at midnight, 12:01, they were getting phone calls, right? And I had players on my own team that obviously that happened to, and I had a player or two on my own team that didn't happen for. They didn't commit. We had some kids, end up committing by, middle of September. 2 weeks later, they were committed. We had some kids that didn't commit till the middle of November, that went through the process. So I think it just varies from player to player. I think the transfer portal is having a bigger effect on the college recruiting now than anything, because, if I'm a college coach, and do I gamble on a high school kid and what they potentially can be, or I gamble on a college kid with college numbers, right? If she has some numbers and I've seen that kid play, or I played against her or whatever that might look like, I have a little better knowledge of her. But I think it is harder. And that very first year, those kids that went out of that 20 class, right? Like there was some challenges. That 20 class, that 21s, the 22s, like there were some challenges there. And we've had some players have some success early on in college that off our team. And it's funny you brought it up, because we talked about how important the preparation to be ready for college softball when COVID had hit and they weren't able to, like, we had to train while we waited, and we had to put a lot of emphasis on preparation. And then, not to rehash it, but what the Alliance gave them as far as a preparatory step. I had one of my freshmen last night throw a no-hitter. I had 2 other freshmen that are Power 5 that are batting leadoff and leading the team and hitting. And I'm not beating my chest for that. I'm just so proud of them and the preparatory work they've done. Those things don't happen by accident.
Right.
And they're in great programs, and those coaches are coaching them up really well too. But I think their foundation of what they were built on have prepared them for success in a lot of ways, not just softball, but life, and endured a really challenging aspect. So I don't think the COVID thing is as big a deal at this point. Like the 23 class was a little slower. I think the 24s and 25s, you're going to start to see it get a little bit normal again.
Yeah, I think it's starting to iron out a little bit. And I think you're right about the 23, 24s, and 25s. I think it'll kind of, the COVID super seniors will kind of, get out. And I think the transfer portal now, it's gained that so much, I don't know, steam, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word, but like we hear it so much because of football. And then it's kind of related over, to different things, but it's in college softball too. I mean, girls are moving, might not be the right fit, this or that. And so that takes a little bit of effect on the high school seniors that are coming up, and the juniors are trying to figure out what program they are, because that school they want to go to may, that coach could be waiting on something, waiting on something to shake out, or, hey, we're not looking at 23s right now, or we're done looking at 23. So now that player's got to, adjust their list a little bit. So we got the girls, they've gone through college now, they're graduating. What's that next step for them? What are we looking at as far as, pro fast pitch?
I think that's probably the most disappointing part of our sport, to be honest with you. It's the thing that disappoints me the most is, we have a wonderful product. Some people stepped up and created Athletes Unlimited, and the players that are playing in that environment, it's an incredible platform for them to play. They're compensated really well, and they produce, obviously because they're such good athletes. Well, like we talked about before, they produce a great product. But I think the concept of pro softball should not be some modified version like that going forward. Like, I think if we're saying we're being realistic about it, and we say that we're not going to negotiate to play some modified version of pro sports because we're females and people don't want to invest in it. I think it's incumbent upon us to be leaders in creating that environment. And that is going to take some work, because it really always just comes down to the financial model. It's not the product. It's not the want to. I think as fans, I was involved in the NPF. I coached in NPF. I think the fans have a responsibility as well. Like, to be completely honest about this, they need to go out and support those games when those games happen. And a lot of that falls back on the teams when it comes to marketing and opportunities. And you're seeing the reason college softball is so popular is, like you said, you can pull up, you can watch a game, 10 games in the course of a weekend. You see them, they're creating stars, they're doing all that. We've got to figure out a product and a mechanism that puts in place a professional model that compensates athletes to make a living, not as a side gig. I'm talking about a living, and create an environment where it's financially structured, that it fiscally works. That takes investment at the corporate level from non-endemic people, people who are not part of softball or bat and ball. Like, we need the people like Coca-Cola and other places, people, and I'm just using an example, not to bash them, but we need those guys to value our sport in a lot of ways. And I think when those things start to happen, we probably need, and this is what's exciting. I know the Alliance has a priority towards being part of the solution for pro softball. It is a priority item for the Alliance. Those steps are not in place. There's not something pending for pro softball. That's not what I'm saying, but we want to be part of that path of helping create what that looks like. And I know there are some strategic conversations taking place. And to be honest with you, it's going to have to incorporate Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball is going to have to do a better job of supporting softball at the pro level, just like the NBA did with the WNBA.
Absolutely.
That's just a path that is a proven business model. And I'm not bashing women's basketball, but it's not as exciting as women's softball. It's not. And so once the people who can get their head wrapped around that investment, it will take off like a rocket ship. And I think that's probably needs to be our first steps forward. And I'd like to say that we'd have these solutions fixed in the next year or two. I don't know that that's realistic, but I would say that with the right people involved, I think that it could be something in the very near future that we're able to look at our young ladies that play for us, say, you can be a pro one day and you can make a living. This is what you can do for the rest of your life if that's what you choose to do. Yeah. That's got to become something real. And I think we have to be forward thinking. We have to think outside the box, and we have to be willing to do things that we haven't done before. We tend on the pro side to rehash things, right? On things that weren't successful. And I'm disappointed in that, right? Like, I just go back to my military terms, man. If we use a footpath and we've got an azimuth and everybody gets tore up going up that path, I'm not going down that path again. Yeah. Like, let's pull out a map and shoot an azimuth and go a different direction and find a different way to get to where we say we want to go. We can't keep going down the path that hasn't worked. And I think with softball, pro softball at least, we have done that too often.
I agree. I think, we look at like the XFL, it's coming back, but now look what they're doing. They are in some type of communication, some type of talks with the NFL to make it work. You need that proven professional league that's there to some support on some level. And like you're saying with the NBA and the WNBA, I think MLB needs to get involved in some capacity to create some type of salary situation for those players to where they can dedicate their time and their efforts to play in the game to make the game better, instead of having to go out and make a living elsewhere just to play professional sport because they're making peanuts out there for what they're doing. The product, it sells itself. I mean, it's there. that 43 feet and 60-foot bases. I mean, the
Yeah.
game is doing what it does. We were just talking earlier about how much more exciting it is because how fast paced it is and everything that's involved with it. So do you think that with pro softball, once it gets going, would it be something regionally that would have to take hold and then go like different leagues along like the Alliance way? Is that the model that you think would show some success?
I honestly am uncomfortable answering the question, Tyler, to be honest with you. Because for fear of not, like I said, replicating something that's already been tried.
Right.
We're not inventing, like we're not coming up with a cure for some incredible disease, right? We're talking about putting one of the best sport products, and let's be honest, the facts don't lie.
Right.
Softball on television is one of the most value watched products, period, at any sport. It's a revenue producing sport now, right? And so
Absolutely.
what we have to do is, it's not even necessarily about, is it regional or is it this or that? This is the world according to the guy in Texas that don't know much. But my thought is that it has to be a deeper conversation than that, right? It has to be, how do we create the environment that corporate America and a television contract is the backbone and the hub for what it looks like. If we try to create what it looks like first and then convince people to put money in it, that's different. If
Right.
we create the business structure for it that makes it profitable, then we can build off of that. And I think that we have to flip that over and go that direction and start talking about, what's the business model look like that would make it that Montana Fowles, who's in college right now, is going to sign a multi-million-dollar contract when she graduates to play professional softball in the United States of America.
Right.
And in how corporate America expand on that. I think the NIL stuff that is happening at the collegiate level is going to aid that process, because you're seeing corporate entities who are not endemic to that particular sport invest money in athletes because they see what the value is.
Right.
Okay, now it's our job is to create a different picture of what that value can look like in an entire league. And so I think those are where we have to start our conversations. The reason I said I don't know that it's a scenario that gets done in the next year or two, whatever that looks like. But I think we have to at least start the process. And I use a lot of military analogies, but I think we have to start the process by open the map and starting to shoot a different azimuth to get where we want to get.
Right.
And we have to stop regurgitating and rehashing failed approaches. And we don't need to come up with gimmicks either. Our sport's too good to come up with a gimmick that makes it work, right? I think we need to be very strong about our athletes. Like anything else, you're going to sell a product, make it about the product, right? And the product is the best thing we got. It's our athletes. It's our young ladies that we have playing the sport.
I think that's where a lot of different things fail, is we'll take something good and then we'll try to make it better. We'll try to change it a little bit and then end up getting away from what it truly is. I want to sort of get into the recruiting process. One more question, as far as if there's something you could change with the recruiting process, or something that works really well that you back up really well, or something that you would want to change. What is something that you would change about how the girls are going about the recruiting process and the schools are going about the recruiting process? Is there something that would make it easier, or you wish you would see some type of change?
Yeah, you're gonna get me in trouble.
No.
And I
would
think
make it easier for the girls to be seen in the right way. Well, we're not getting anybody in trouble, but make
no. I mean, when I say in trouble, I'll probably say something that's probably not popular and popular in some ways. We condensed the recruiting window to 6. If we're just talking about the Division I level, and just talk about it from these terms, we condensed it to 6 weeks in the fall and then the summer. The 6 weeks in the fall, it makes it extremely challenging, because inevitably every player is trying to maximize their exposure, right? So as a team, it ultimately puts me having to play 6 weeks in a row, right? Theoretically, right? And so then player development gets affected by that, right? Meaning we don't get to spend as much time on the practice field with them as we'd like to from a team perspective. And inevitably, I'm not one of those guys. Well, you're not forced to do that because I'm sitting here saying one thing, and then I'm fixing to use the example that there are some college coaches that say, well, yeah, but I can't get out and recruit at this time of the year because of this. Well, you can if you decide you want to, right? Like, just like where I'm saying, well, if I don't want to, if a college coach doesn't want to have to go out and recruit all the time, then don't do it. Well, the flip side of that is people could say, well, if you don't want to play 6 weeks in a row, then don't do it, right? I'm not a hypocrite in that respect. The challenge is that the feeling and the burden that the 6 week constraint puts on the player, they look at it and say, I have 12 days in the fall to get seen.
Right.
Saturday, because you can only recruit on Saturday and Sunday, right? And theoretically, a lot of college coaches don't stay all day on Sunday. So really, you have 9.5 days that you can get recruited. If you really put it in perspective, a student athlete has 9.5 days in the fall to get recruited. That if you really think about it in those terms, that's incredible. And that's assuming that a college coach is actually getting out on one of those 9.5 days that they were actually on the field. So it becomes the fear of missing out, right? If I don't play and that's the weekend that coach is out recruiting, or if I don't play in that event because the best coaches are going to be there, I have to go. We aren't even talking about the competitive side of the teams. Like, I just want to play. Like, for me, I have a responsibility to get my kids recruited, but that's not my number one responsibility. My number one responsibility is to teach them how to play the game the right way so they can get recruited.
Right.
Well, that starts with competition, and I'm the most competitive guy you probably ever going to meet. If I'm playing my mom in checkers, she's getting her ass kicked. Like, I'm gonna hug her when we're done, but she's losing, right? So us teaching players to compete, like all those things, I have to figure out how to navigate that 9.5 days, right? Well, and what's taking place now is we have a lot of colleges that are starting to run camps inside the 6 week window.
Yeah.
Taking players off the field on those 9.5 days they get to play. So that's why I'm really passionate about this. I think we've gotten off base. They took away Fridays as a day for evaluation.
Right.
Where they can't, because they were saying, well, we don't want kids to miss school. But these are the same thing. But you're asking them to come to a camp that starts at 9 a.m. on Saturday.
Right.
They have to get out of school on Friday to fly to your camp. Like, what they're saying is not adding up. And so I'm a free commerce guy. Like, I just say open it up. College coach wants to go out and watch, let them do it. The college coach that doesn't want to, and because the argument is they want to stay and want to be with their team in the fall, then be with your team. Or send one of your other coaches out. Like it goes back to, like, I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say, well, I'm forced to play the 6 weeks. No, it comes down to just number of days for us because it's compressed so much. And so if I was fixing or changing anything, that's where I'd start. I'd make it a really open process that recruiting opens up on September 1 and ends, the last weekend before Thanksgiving. College coach can freely go in and out. If you're a northern state, obviously you're going to recruit a little more heavy in the September timeframe regionally for them, right? Those kids can't even get seen regionally when the weather is good in Chicago in September.
Right.
They have to wait till the middle of October, right? They're actually hurting themselves. Mm-hmm. If it was open and kids could come and go and players could, well, we're playing this weekend, I'm playing twice in September, I'm playing twice in October, I'm playing twice in November. Now you have some off date. Like, we've made it harder on ourselves with doing this. What we're saying is we're trying to help the student athlete. And I think it just takes some adjustments, to make it a little bit better. We've made it hard on them right now. Camps and visits. I had more kids missing camps and visits this fall during the recruiting process, during the 6 week window, than I've ever seen in my life. I had a kid who's a 23, she's a Power 5 kid, play one time in the fall. She played one time, but she's having to take all the visits.
Yeah.
Right? She's only got 6 weeks. She played 1 week, right? Like, it's just not right. So all we've done there is mess with their development. She missed the entire fall for the most part. So I think that's the fix is to put some smart people in a room and come up with some a little bit different process. And hopefully that happens. I know there's some conversation. there's actually people out there that would say, oh, let's just do away with recruiting in the fall altogether.
Right.
Like there's people that are saying that, like college coaches. And I'm like, wait, what? Like you talking about making it harder on the student athlete to get seen? That's when I question it, because then I say, oh no, wait, you just want them to pay on their own dime to come to your camp. Right? You want them to fly to you so you can see them. You're not saying cancel recruiting. You're saying cancel the opportunity for them to play in front of college coaches without coming to their campus. I don't like that. I think it's wrong. And like I said, I'm going to get in trouble with some people.
No.
There are people that are on one side or the other, but I think enough people know me. I just say what I believe, and it is what it is.
I'm with you. They either need to make that window longer or create multiple windows or something to allow that student athlete to continue what they're doing and not shake it up so much. And like you said, playing one time in 6 weeks is not beneficial to anybody.
No,
It's
not
just
beneficial to the player more than anything else. And as a team, we figured it out. Like I'm not just me, my team, but
right.
my team has enough depth to pull that off. You know, if you have a team that their best pitcher is gone 5 out of 6 weeks because she's doing all the visits, that can adversely affect that team pretty bad. And now it's affecting the other kids who are trying to get a scholarship because they don't have their best pitcher there enough, right? Like all those dynamics become real. Here goes my light again. All those dynamics become real. And, you know, I think there's not a perfect example. Like there's just not. And I wish there was a better way to say that. But, and I know that the intent was right. I think we just have to modify the end game.
Yeah. I think when it comes to NCAA and some of the changes stuff, I think they're trying to do what's best for like the whole group, but not taking into consideration that each sport kind of has its own window. And I think NCAA, you know, they're doing the best with what they got, but it's so big. There's so many sports, there's so many student athletes. I want to finish up with this and you know, take it however you want to take it and run with it. What's next for you guys, and what does the Bombers have going on? What are you looking forward to for this year and, you know, the next few months that you have?
Yeah, I appreciate it. You know, we're very fortunate to have some of the best coaches in the country coaching our program. You know, Kat Osterman is our director of pitching performance. She's the pitching coach on my 18U team. I'm blown away by that every day that I share the dugout with her. It's incredible to have her part of it. We have a director of player performance and a guy named Bobby Buchanan, he's at AAU in the sort of like his involvement at the collegiate and pro side of it. But we're very big on player development, and I'm fortunate enough to share a seat at the table with some guys who are involved in some of the most high level approach to player development when it comes to Major League Baseball and college softball and college baseball, obviously, when it comes to data capture, data analytics, sport performance. And so for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been involved in that process. And for the Bombers, you know, I pushed our chips in to player development as being the tip of the spear for us is how we were going to continue to get better. And we've had a significant run utilizing that approach. And I felt like if we were just using the car analogy, we've been operating on about 2 cylinders, right? Like we've just been scratching the surface when it comes to that. Some of the incredible things, we use a platform called Softball Cloud, which is a software product that allows us to take our data analytics and capture from all of our players all over the country and allow our player development people to have eyes and sight on it. It scrubs all the data. It gives us a really good data insight into how we make our players better. And then it's our job as coaches to help to use that information and turn around and perform better on the field. A lot of people get lost in data and think that it's too much. I don't want to know about it. Or my players, they don't want to hear. Like if I told you how little we actually shared with our players about it, it would shock you. Like we just don't talk to them as much about it. It's more for us as player development people. 7 or 8 years ago, I was fortunate to meet a guy named Ronnie Ortegon. He's the hitting coordinator for the Atlanta Braves. This was before I kind of started down the path of trying to understand data its use in the game and how it's going to help make us better. But I wanted to make the Bombers better. And, he helped share with me the Brave structure, the pro MLB softball front office mentality. And so I basically turned around and replicated that at the Bomber level and created our structure is very minor league baseball approach to how fast is a kid going to advance to the next level, and don't move them too soon. Don't move them too late. What development characteristics need to be addressed for this player to take the next step? What are they doing well, and how do we expand on that? Like those type of things. That was pre-data capture and analytics. That was the absolute most important move the Bombers Fastpitch ever made. Once we started adding in the data side of things, that's a whole nother show, right? Because we're changing what a player's curveball looks like by finger placement, finger grips. Like we have the ability to capture her fingerprints on a ball, and we catalog those fingerprints on a virtual ball. So when we pull that up, we can apply changes in the characteristics of the pitch. If we take this much gyro out of this pitch, this is what the action of the ball looks like, and we can overlay that stuff and really start to create a better pitch, a tunneling difference. And so those are the type of things we're doing with our players, and they're just getting snippets of it. They're just the benefactor of it, of the adjustments. And we share with them quite a bit. I think that's why a lot of schools recruit a certain number of our players. We've seen a lot of players to a lot of similar schools, is because they speak that language. They understand the dynamics of that. And I think that that's going to be where the sport goes. In recruiting, we were just talking about recruiting. Data capture, data analytics is going to be how it's done. College coaches don't have to guess or gamble on players any longer. We're 4 or 5 years behind baseball, the sport of softball is. And a good friend of mine who I'm in business with on the data analytics side of things that I'm talking about, purchased a company called Yakkertech. And Yakkertech is an optical tracking device that's going to be installed in every softball stadium in America, right? Eventually. That's what's happening. It's in baseball. But, Yakkertechs are in University of Texas, Florida State, North Carolina State, all these different places, right? Going into OU and Oklahoma State. Like these guys, this in-game data capture, how does the player perform in-game? Right? It's one thing to hit off a tee and you put it on Twitter and it looks cool, right? But how does that play in-game, right? And once the data capture starts happening in-game, then it's going to find its way in recruiting. And college coaches, we share that information with, because we have the ability to capture some in-game data by our relationship with these guys. And when we're sharing that information in-game and it plays and it's better than the player they have currently on their staff, they want that kid.
Yeah. And
that's what's going to come. They're going to say, do you have your data in the recruiting process? And if you don't, you become a question mark versus the kid who can prove what their stuff does in-game. So whether people want it to be part of the recruiting process or not, it will be. And it is. It is now. It is now. And it's going to continue to be a bigger part.
I think, when we're talking about recruiting, sometimes it comes down to splitting hairs. And if some girl in her organization has got that data, that, hey, here's mine, and the other one's got maybe some handwritten notes, or that could end up being the difference. And a lot of times it is the difference.
Tyler, we've been capturing data for years. It's called a radar gun, right? like that's a fact. Like people don't get it. Like we've been capturing data for years. We say, yeah, she throws this. Oh yeah, you captured that? Okay, yeah, I got a pocket radar. See, it's a 64. That is that proves to people what you say, right? How many times you've been around somebody? Oh, she throws 68. She gets in the game and you put her pocket radar. She's throwing 62, right? Like what you say is going to become less important than what you can show.
Right.
And that's really where the product Softball Cloud, and I'm so proud of that product, and my friend Kevin Davidson, who owns that company, it takes the data and turns it into a visual opportunity for a college coach to evaluate.
And it's
or a player development coach to decide, how do we move this player from here to there? Right? How do we make them better?
it gives them that snapshot real quick, and then it shows them exactly where they're at, and then that trajectory of where they're going. It shows trends. And Matt, you look at baseball as a professional, how far analytics has come with that. And I think it's just a trickle down effect. And it's proven numbers that if you can track data, then you can use it to your advantage.
Well, and data's finding its way into so many other aspects of the sport. We go back to the NIL stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
How baseball has been monetizing data for years. Like I didn't know this stuff, bro. Like I didn't know this, but I got to where if you knew what the New York Yankees paid colleges, and I'm just using the Yankees as an example. Like I'm talking about Major League Baseball. If you knew what Major League Baseball teams paid college programs for their data, they buy that data.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, that's the player's data. That's the school. Well, the player hadn't really been able to monetize that up to this point because of NIL, right?
Wow.
The data is what is the value. The value is the data, right? Because now that data can be used for draft decisions. All these different things are $1 million decisions, right? The difference between getting drafted in the first round versus getting drafted in the third round. Well, I'm not drafting a guy in the first round who doesn't have the data to support that. They don't make those $1 million decisions without a whole lot of insight. And being involved in that from sitting in the back of the room as the softball guy, getting to be exposed to that and see the path forward for how it's going to relate to softball. When we talk about pro softball, these are the type of things we're talking about, right? Kids are signing NIL deals because of their data in their social media accounts. How many followers? How many reaches do they have? Though that's data, right? Mm-hmm. That's monetized data. All right. They're signing a deal because you have this data and you do this, right? That's data. But what's going to come from it is on the softball side, we'll be able to value the data on field and in performance. The performance data will become a really, really powerful product as it relates to, like I said, player development, recruiting, NIL opportunities, data monetization, all that stuff.
And everything we do is on a phone.
Don't fool yourself. Pretty soon, everything I'm telling you we're capturing, we're gonna be able to do with this. Yeah. It's the same cameras. Like people don't even, I didn't know this. It's the same cameras, bro. The same camera that we use on this iPhone is the exact same camera in most data capture devices.
It's crazy. Well, I think that's a good point for us to end part one here. I want to have you back on whenever you're available. We got to make sure we're in the window, that 6-week window with the recruiting.
Yeah. I'm free on Fridays, man. I can be talked to on Fridays where everybody's good. So.
Well, we covered a whole lot of stuff here, and I want to dive deep into the data again and kind of explain that process and kind of not necessarily hit us with some real numbers, but kind of give us some scenarios of how it works, why it works, and how it's proven, and this is why, so that other teams, other organizations, other coaches will be able to use that information as well, because I know I don't use it. I don't use it enough. I mean, like you said, we see data all the time, but when we start to really focus on it, how that can change the game for some girls that, may not even know who Bombers are. She's 12 years old and trying to figure out how she's going to play. She may not have the coaches around her that can do it. And also helping the parents. I mean, that's what this is all about for me, is getting folks on just like you, having the time to sit down and help out, anybody around the softball game. I mean, the world needs people just like you, and I appreciate you coming on and talking to me and sharing your story with the Bombers and with from Alliance. So if I can have you back on in the future, man, we're going to do it and sit down. I thank you for coming on.
Yeah, man, I appreciate having me, man. I come back anytime. Love talking softball. Appreciate what you do for the sport. Appreciate what the platform you're creating for the sport to get better. So, I'm a big fan of Black Diamond now, and anything the Bombers and I can do to help promote what you're doing, we're all about it, man. So I appreciate you having me.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
All right, that's a wrap for this episode. Huge shout out to Scott Smith and the Bombers Fastpitch Organization. They're doing a lot of great things for the game. Also, Alliance, it's growing, it's thriving, it's doing really well. It's giving those girls a platform to really grow and try to get to that next level. If If you like this type of content, make sure you're sharing it with a friend, and when you do, you tell them you love them.